40 degrees Celsius below zero. You are lying on frozen ground, with nothing but animal hide between your skin and earth that wants to pull every molecule of heat from your body. The wind cuts through the darkness like a blade made of ice, and somewhere beyond the tree line, something with teeth is circling your shelter. Your ancestors lived this reality for 60,000 years, every single night of their lives, and somehow, impossibly, they survived long enough to create you. The human body begins shutting down at 35 degrees Celsius core temperature. Your fingers stop working. Your thoughts turn to fog. Your heart rhythm becomes erratic. At 30 degrees, you lose consciousness. At 28 degrees, you are clinically dead. Modern humans wearing the latest expedition gear die in Arctic conditions with alarming regularity, and they have GPS, satellite phones, and rescue helicopters standing by. Your ancestors had none of that. They had knowledge we have forgotten, protocols we have never learned, and engineering solutions that make modern survival experts look like children playing in snow. Hollywood taught you lies. That massive bonfire lighting up the night? Carbon monoxide coffin. That cozy sleeping position curled up alone in the corner? That instinct to huddle deep in the cave away from the cold entrance. Every single thing your modern brain tells you to do in minus 40-degree darkness will kill you before dawn. The gap between what you think keeps you alive and what actually keeps you alive is measured in frozen corpses that never woke up. But they did wake up, generation after generation, through ice ages that turned Europe into a glacier and winters that lasted 9 months. Your ancestors opened their eyes to another frozen morning. They did not just endure the cold, they mastered it. They turned the Arctic night into a survival system so sophisticated that it kept entire bloodlines alive in conditions that would depopulate modern cities in 72 hours. The engineering they developed was not primitive, it was brilliant. And the protocols they followed were not superstition. They were the difference between extinction and evolution. The answer to how humans slept at minus 40 degrees Celsius without modern gear is not one technique. It is an interlocking system of thermal physics, social cooperation, architectural genius, and biological understanding that took 10,000 years to perfect. Every element had to work in harmony, or the entire group died. There was no room for error, no second chances, no rescue teams. You either understood the system completely, or you became another skeleton frozen in permafrost, waiting for archaeologists to find you 20,000 years later and wonder how you could have been so stupid. Imagine this. You wake up in absolute darkness. Not the comfortable darkness of your bedroom where you can reach for your phone and flood the space with light. Not even the darkness of a power outage where streetlights filter through your windows. This is primordial darkness. Total. Complete. The kind that presses against your eyeballs like a physical weight. You cannot see your hand 2 centimeters from your face. And the cold is not just cold. It is minus 40 degrees Celsius. The air itself feels like it is made of knives. Your breath freezes instantly. You can hear it crystallize in the air before it falls like tiny shards of glass onto the fur beneath your face. The animal hide you are lying on is the only barrier between your body and frozen earth that has not seen temperatures above freezing for 6 months. Somewhere outside this shelter, the wind is screaming, not howling, screaming, like a living thing trying to claw its way inside to find you. And it will find you. Because the walls around you are not walls. They are stacked stones and packed snow and woven branches that let wisps of that wind through every gap. You can feel it searching for exposed skin. This is not a camping trip. This is not an adventure you chose. This is your life. This is every night of your life. You are 23,000 years in the past. And you are one of 8 people huddled in a semi-subterranean shelter, somewhere in what will one day be called Siberia. Your group has been here for 3 months. Winter has 4 more months to go. The sun rose today for exactly 2 hours and 20 minutes, and it will rise for even less tomorrow. The temperature outside has not been above minus 30 degrees Celsius in 47 days. And tonight, like every night, you have to sleep. You have to surrender consciousness in an environment that kills unconscious humans in under 3 hours. Here is what you are wearing: a base layer of thin leather against your skin. Over that, a thicker hide tunic with the fur facing inward. Over that, another layer with the fur facing outward. Your legs are wrapped in similar layers. Your feet are inside boots made from caribou leg skin, stuffed with dried grass that you replaced this morning because yesterday's grass absorbed too much moisture from your sweat and stopped insulating. On your hands, mittens made from winter hair fur. On your head, a hood that covers everything except a small opening for your eyes and mouth. And you are still cold, not uncomfortable, cold. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache and your joints stiffen and your thoughts slow down like honey in winter. The shelter you are in is approximately 4 meters across and 2 meters high at the center. The floor is 1 meter below ground level because you and your group dug down into the permafrost using stone tools and antler picks, which took 3 people 11 days to accomplish. The walls are made from mammoth bones, stones, and wooden branches, all packed together with moss and sealed with ice. The roof is layers of hide covered with sod, covered with snow. In the center of this space is a small fire. Not a roaring bonfire. A fire the size of your 2 fists, burning carefully selected dry wood that produces minimal smoke. This fire is not for warmth, it is for survival math, and the math is brutal. A human body at rest produces approximately 100 watts of heat. That is roughly the same as a single incandescent light bulb. At minus 40 degrees Celsius, the environment wants to steal that heat from you at a rate of approximately 300 watts. You are losing 3 times more heat than you are producing. Your body tries to compensate by shivering, which can increase heat production to about 200 watts. But you cannot shiver for 8 hours straight. Shivering burns through your glycogen stores in under 2 hours, and when those are gone, your body starts cannibalizing muscle tissue. By hour 4, you are hypothermic. By hour 6, you are dead. This is not theory. This is thermodynamics. This is physics that does not care about courage or willpower. So you do not sleep alone, ever. You are surrounded by 7 other people. Your wife is pressed against your back. Your uncle is against your front. The children are in the center, layered between adults like filling in a sandwich. Everyone is wearing their full clothing. Everyone is under a shared covering made from multiple animal hides sewn together and weighted at the edges. This is not about comfort or social bonding. This is about metabolic heat pooling. 8 bodies producing 800 watts of heat in a confined space insulated by fur and earth and breath. The shared body heat raises the temperature inside your layered covering to approximately minus 5 degrees Celsius. Still below freezing, still deadly if you were alone, but survivable when you are together. The fire burns at the center, not to warm you directly, but to manage carbon dioxide and provide minimal radiant heat to the core of the shelter. The smoke escapes through a carefully designed hole in the roof that is small enough to prevent heat loss, but large enough to prevent suffocation. This hole was not randomly placed. It was positioned based on prevailing wind direction and tested over multiple nights to find the exact size that balances ventilation with heat retention. Your ancestors calculated this not with mathematics, but with dead bodies. The groups that got the hole size wrong did not wake up. The groups that survived learned from their corpses. You do not sleep through the night. No one does. The rotation protocol is absolute. Every 2 hours, someone must wake up and tend the fire. Not feed it. Tend it. You add 1 or 2 small pieces of wood. Adjust the airflow. Check that the smoke is escaping properly. Check that the entrance seal has not been breached by wind. Check that everyone is still breathing. Check that no one has accidentally exposed skin. Check for the smell of predators. Check for the sound of ice cracking above. Check for the temperature drop that signals the fire is dying. And then wake the next person and tell them it is their turn. This rotation has kept your bloodline alive for 600 generations. Breaking it means everyone dies. Outside this shelter, the world is hostile beyond modern comprehension. The wind chill makes the effective temperature minus 60 degrees Celsius. Exposed skin freezes in under 60 seconds. Your lungs would freeze if you breathed that air directly, so you have to breathe through a scarf made from fur that pre-warms the air. Walking 50 meters in those conditions requires full clothing, constant movement, and perfect knowledge of your surroundings. Getting lost means death in under 20 minutes. And you cannot carry a light source that is bright enough to see by, because that requires either a massive torch that burns too fast, or a fire basket that is too heavy to carry, and produces smoke that marks your position for every predator within 5 kilometers. And there are predators. Cave lions the size of modern horses. Short-faced bears that stand 4 meters tall. Dire wolves hunting in packs of 20. These animals are not afraid of humans. They are not accustomed to humans. They are opportunistic hunters that have learned your shelters contain concentrated calories, and they will test your defenses every 3 to 4 nights. Your group keeps sharpened stakes positioned around the entrance. You keep throwing stones piled within reach. You keep a system of noisemakers made from bone and sinew that can wake everyone instantly. And you keep a protocol for retreat into a deeper section of the shelter that can be sealed from inside if something breaches the entrance. This protocol has been used twice this winter. Both times the group survived by abandoning the outer shelter and waiting 16 hours for the predator to leave. You settle back into the warmth envelope created by the bodies around you. Your breathing synchronizes with the breathing of the group. This is not conscious. This is automatic. Your nervous system entrains to the collective rhythm because breathing in sync reduces carbon dioxide buildup and distributes oxygen more efficiently. Your ancestors did not know they just knew that groups who breathed together survived longer. So you breathe together. And slowly, carefully, despite every instinct screaming that unconsciousness in this environment is suicide, you allow yourself to drift towards sleep. Because you have the pillars, because you have the protocols, because you have knowledge written in survival and sealed in blood, and because 60,000 years of human experience has proven that this system works. But the question remains. The question that should haunt every modern human sitting in climate-controlled comfort. How did they figure this out? How did the first groups learn what worked and what killed? How many frozen corpses did it take to develop the rotation protocol? How many suffocated families taught you where to put the smoke hole? How many children lost to hypothermia established the body layering pattern? The answer is written in your DNA. The survivors were the ones who learned. The extinction was reserved for those who did not. And you are the proof that the learning worked. You exist because they got it right. Every single night. For 60,000 years. Your modern brain is a death trap. Every instinct evolution gave you for survival has been overwritten by 10,000 years of civilization and 30 years of watching movies where the hero survives impossible conditions through sheer willpower and a convenient cave. The problem is that Hollywood directors do not consult thermodynamics. They consult drama. And drama is not interested in keeping you alive at -40 degrees Celsius. Drama is interested in making you feel alive right before you freeze to death. So let us systematically destroy every single thing you think you know about cold weather survival. Because the gap between what feels right and what keeps you breathing is measured in hours. Myth number 1. Build a massive fire. This is the big one. This is the instinct that gets planted in your brain by every survival movie ever made. The hero stumbles into a cave, builds a roaring bonfire that lights up the entire space, and falls asleep bathed in orange warmth while the flames dance on the walls. Beautiful, cinematic, absolutely lethal. Here is what actually happens when you build a large fire in an enclosed shelter at -40 degrees Celsius. The fire consumes oxygen at an exponential rate. A fire twice as large does not consume twice as much oxygen. It consumes 4 times as much. The chemistry of combustion is brutal. For every unit of wood you burn, you need approximately 15 units of oxygen. A large fire in a small shelter depletes available oxygen in under 40 minutes. But you do not suffocate from lack of oxygen. You suffocate from carbon monoxide. Incomplete combustion produces carbon monoxide at rates that scale with fire size and oxygen depletion. A small, well-managed fire produces minimal carbon monoxide because it has sufficient oxygen for complete combustion. A large fire in a confined space starts producing massive amounts of carbon monoxide within 20 minutes. Carbon monoxide is heavier than air. It sinks. It pools at ground level where you are sleeping. It binds to hemoglobin 200 times more effectively than oxygen. You do not wake up gasping. You do not feel yourself dying. You just stop breathing. Your group wakes up to find you dead with no visible wounds, no signs of struggle, and no understanding of what killed you. Unless your group already learned this lesson from previous corpses, which they did. That is why the fire you saw in Chapter 1 was the size of 2 fists. Myth number 2. Sleep directly on the ground. This feels intuitive. The ground is solid. The ground is stable. The ground is lower than the cold air, so heat should rise above you and keep you warm. Every single part of that logic will kill you. The ground at -40 degrees Celsius is frozen to a depth of several meters. That frozen ground is a perfect thermal conductor. It wants to equalize temperature. Your body is 37 degrees Celsius. The ground is -40 degrees Celsius. That is a 77-degree differential. The moment you lie down, that differential begins resolving itself. The ground pulls heat from your body through conduction at a rate that makes convective cooling look gentle. You lose heat through ground contact approximately 25 times faster than through air contact. Your ancestors measured this, not with thermometers, but with dead children. So you do not sleep on the ground. Ever. You sleep on a layer of insulation that breaks thermal contact. Dried grass, moss, small branches, animal hide, anything that creates air pockets between your body and earth. The insulation layer must be at least 15 centimeters thick. Any less and ground conduction still kills you. Any more and you are wasting materials you need for other insulation. Your ancestors learned the exact thickness through trial and error, and the errors were fatal. The groups that used 10 centimeters of grass woke up hypothermic. The groups that used 20 centimeters survived but ran out of grass materials before winter ended and died in month 5. 15 centimeters was the Goldilocks zone written in frozen corpses. And you sleep on that layer every single night because the alternative is not discomfort. The alternative is death. Myth number 3. Seal the shelter completely. This is the modern obsession with insulation taken to its logical extreme. If cold air is killing you, eliminate all air exchange. Seal every gap. Block every draft. Create a perfectly insulated container that holds heat. Congratulations, you just built a suffocation chamber. Humans consume oxygen and produce carbon dioxide. 8 humans in a 4-meter shelter consume approximately 60 liters of oxygen per hour and produce approximately 50 liters of carbon dioxide per hour. Without air exchange, oxygen levels drop below survivable thresholds in under 6 hours. Carbon dioxide levels rise to toxic concentrations even faster. You do not wake up. You do not gasp. You just transition from sleep to death without ever regaining consciousness. Your shelter needs ventilation, not drafts, ventilation. There is a difference. The smoke hole you learned about in Chapter 1 is not just for smoke, it is for air exchange. It creates a pressure differential that pulls fresh air in through small gaps at ground level and exhausts stale air through the top. This is not accidental. This is engineering. The size of that hole determines the rate of air exchange. Too large and you lose all your heat. Too small and you suffocate. The optimal size is approximately 8 to 12 centimeters in diameter for an 8-person shelter. This measurement was not calculated with mathematics. It was learned through multi-generational trial and error, where the errors resulted in entire families found dead in sealed shelters. Modern survival experts call this the stack effect. Your ancestors called it the difference between waking up and not waking up. Myth number 4. Stay awake to tend the fire all night. This is the solo survival fantasy. The rugged individual who conquers the wilderness through vigilance and determination. One person keeping watch while others sleep. One hero preventing disaster through sleepless dedication. One corpse found frozen in the morning because exhaustion kills faster than cold. Human beings cannot maintain vigilance for 8 continuous hours in survival conditions. Attention degrades. Reaction time slows. Decision-making becomes impaired. After 4 hours of sleep deprivation in cold conditions, your cognitive function drops to levels equivalent to legal intoxication. After 8 hours, you are functionally brain damaged. You make mistakes. You forget protocols. You fall asleep involuntarily and let the fire die. Or worse, you feed the fire too much in your impaired state and create the carbon monoxide trap from myth number 1. That is why the rotation protocol exists. 2-hour shifts. Short enough that fatigue does not accumulate to dangerous levels. Long enough that everyone gets multiple sleep cycles. The person on watch is not a hero. They are a cog in a survival machine that only works if every cog functions perfectly. They wake. They check. They adjust. They wake the next person. They sleep. This cycle repeats 4 times per person per night. No one is special. No one is exempt. The strongest member of the group does not take longer shifts. The weakest member does not take shorter shifts. Everyone rotates equally because the system only works if the load is distributed. Inequality in the rotation creates resentment, which creates conflict, which creates social breakdown, which creates death. Your ancestors learned that cooperation is not about fairness. It is about mathematics. Equal shifts equal survival. Unequal shifts equal extinction. Myth number 5. Huddle in the deepest part of the cave away from the entrance. This is the instinctive response to threat. Retreat to the most protected position. Put maximum distance between yourself and danger. Burrow deep where the cold cannot find you, and you just trapped yourself in a carbon dioxide pocket where you will suffocate before dawn. Caves and deep shelters have air stratification. Cold air is denser than warm air. It sinks to the lowest point. But carbon dioxide is even denser than cold air. It pools in depressions and deep sections. Any shelter with significant depth variation creates carbon dioxide traps in the lowest areas. Your ancestors knew this because they found dead families in the back sections of deep caves while the entrance areas had survivable air. The optimal sleeping position is not the deepest point. It is the middle third of the shelter where air circulation is best and carbon dioxide concentration is lowest. Every single one of these myths feels right. Every single one is reinforced by modern survival media. And every single one has a body count measured in thousands. Your ancestors did not avoid these mistakes through superior intelligence or special knowledge. They avoided them through generational learning, purchased with the deaths of those who tried the wrong methods first. The difference between you and them is not that you are smarter. The difference is that they had to be right or die, and you have never been tested. But understanding why your instincts are wrong is only half the answer. The other half is understanding what actually works. And what actually works is a system so sophisticated and so precisely calibrated that it challenges everything you think you know about primitive humans. That system has 4 pillars, and those 4 pillars are the only reason you exist. The answer to sleeping at -40 degrees Celsius is not one technique. It is a system. 4 interlocking pillars that must function in perfect harmony, or the entire structure collapses and everyone dies. Your ancestors did not stumble upon these pillars through luck or divine intervention. They discovered them through the most brutal teacher in existence, extinction. Every group that failed to implement all 4 pillars left no descendants. Every group that got even one pillar wrong disappeared from the genetic record. You exist because your ancestors got all 4 pillars right. Every single night. For 600 generations. And the engineering sophistication of these pillars will destroy every assumption you have about primitive intelligence. Pillar 1. Shelter architecture that defies thermal physics. You are not building a house. You are engineering a thermal battery. The shelter must hold heat generated by bodies and fire, while allowing just enough ventilation to prevent suffocation. This is not about piling up whatever materials you can find. This is about calculated construction, where every element serves multiple purposes and every measurement matters. The semi-subterranean design is not accidental. By digging down 1 meter into the permafrost, you reduce the surface area exposed to wind by approximately 40%. Wind is not just cold air moving. Wind is convective heat theft that strips warmth from any exposed surface at rates that scale exponentially with wind speed. At -40 degrees Celsius with 30 km/h winds, the effective temperature is -70 degrees Celsius. Every square meter of shelter wall exposed to that wind loses heat at catastrophic rates. But here is what separates genius from ignorance. The walls are not just insulation. They are thermal mass. Mammoth bones, stones, and packed earth absorb heat during the day when the fire is larger and bodies are active. They release that heat slowly over 8 hours of night. This is not primitive stacking of materials. This is thermal capacitance engineering. The bones and stones must be thick enough to store meaningful heat, but not so thick that they steal warmth from the interior faster than they release it. Your ancestors calculated this through trial and error, where the errors meant waking up to find the shelter colder at midnight than at sunset. The optimal wall thickness is approximately 30 to 40 centimeters of mixed materials. Any less and thermal mass is insufficient. Any more, and you are building a heat sink that drains warmth from the air. The groups that got this wrong died not from one catastrophic failure, but from cumulative heat loss that weakened everyone until disease or accident finished the job. The roof design is equally sophisticated, multiple layers of hide separated by air gaps. This is not about piling on more insulation. This is about creating dead air spaces that prevent convective heat loss. Heat does not just conduct through materials, it convects through air movement. A single thick hide roof allows air circulation that carries warmth away. Multiple thin layers with trapped air between them create convective barriers. Each air gap must be approximately 3 to 5 centimeters thick. Any less and conduction between layers negates the insulation benefit. Any more and air circulation within the gap carries heat away. Your ancestors did not understand thermodynamics equations. They understood that certain configurations kept people alive and others did not. The fact that their empirical solution matches modern insulation engineering is not coincidence. It is proof that physics does not care whether you understand the mathematics. Physics only cares whether you obey the rules. Pillar 2. Controlled fire management that walks the line between freezing and suffocation. The fire is not for warmth. The fire is for system stability. It provides just enough radiant heat to raise the interior temperature from -40 degrees Celsius to -10 degrees Celsius. It provides just enough light to navigate during watch rotations without disturbing sleeping people. It provides just enough carbon dioxide and water vapor to prevent the air from becoming so dry that breathing damages lung tissue. And most critically, it consumes just enough oxygen to maintain safe combustion without depleting breathable air. The size of this fire is not negotiable. Too large and you trigger the carbon monoxide trap. Too small and the interior temperature drops below survivable thresholds. The optimal fire size for an 8-person shelter is approximately 20 to 30 centimeters in diameter, with flames no higher than 40 centimeters. But fire size alone is not enough. Fuel selection determines survival. You do not burn whatever wood you can find. You burn specific species selected for energy density and smoke production. Dry birch, aged pine, dead oak. These woods burn hot with minimal smoke when properly seasoned. Wet wood or green wood produces massive smoke that fills the shelter and forces you to increase ventilation, which dumps all your heat. Rotten wood produces toxic compounds that cause respiratory damage. Your ancestors maintained stockpiles of properly selected and dried fuel inside the shelter because going outside to gather wood at night is suicide. That stockpile had to last the entire night with enough reserve for emergencies. Running out of fuel at 3 in the morning means either freezing or going outside in conditions that kill in minutes. The fuel stockpile for one night of winter sleep required approximately 6 to 8 hours of daylight gathering during summer and fall. Multiply that by 200 nights of winter. Multiply that by 8 people. Fire management was not a task. It was a lifestyle. Fire placement matters as much as fire size. The fire must be in the center of the shelter to distribute radiant heat evenly. It must be elevated on a stone platform to prevent ground moisture from weakening the coals. It must be surrounded by reflector stones that direct heat towards sleeping areas without creating hot spots that damage hides. And most critically, it must be positioned directly below the smoke hole with perfect alignment. Misalignment by even 20 centimeters means smoke accumulates in the shelter instead of exhausting through the roof. Your ancestors positioned the fire with precision that rivals modern ventilation engineering. They used plumb lines made from sinew and stone. They used shadow angles from the smoke hole. They tested alignment during construction and adjusted until smoke flow was optimal. This is not primitive fire building. This is computational fluid dynamics, solved through empirical observation and preserved through cultural transmission. Pillar 3. Insulation layering that multiplies thermal resistance. Your clothing is not fashion. Your clothing is a survival system, where every layer serves a specific thermal function, and removing even one layer means death. The base layer against your skin is thin, soft leather that wicks moisture away from your body. Sweat is not just uncomfortable. Sweat is lethal. Water conducts heat 25 times faster than air. Wet clothing loses approximately 90% of its insulation value. Your base layer must move perspiration away from skin before it accumulates and soaks through. This leather is processed with animal brains and smoke to make it supple and moisture-resistant. The tanning process took weeks. Getting it wrong meant clothing that stiffened in cold and cracked, creating gaps that exposed skin to frostbite. The middle layer is thick hide with fur facing inward. This creates an air-trapping matrix against your body. The fur fibers hold pockets of still air warmed by your body heat. This trapped air becomes insulation. But fur matting destroys insulation value. Compressed fur does not trap air. Your ancestors beat the fur daily to maintain loft. They replaced garments when fur wore thin. They rotated clothing so moisture from one day could dry before the next wearing. This maintenance was not optional. Degraded insulation meant hypothermia, meant death. The outer layer is fur facing outward to create a wind barrier and shed snow. This layer must be loose enough to allow air circulation, but tight enough to prevent wind penetration. The engineering is precise. Too tight, and you trap moisture from respiration. Too loose and wind defeats the insulation. Your ancestors adjusted fit using bone toggles and leather laces that could be tightened or loosened based on activity level and temperature. Pillar 4. Body positioning protocol that maximizes collective heat and minimizes individual heat loss. You do not sleep however you want. You sleep in formation. 8 people arranged in a specific pattern developed over thousands of years of trial and error, where the errors were frozen corpses. Adults on the outside. Children in the center. The strongest individuals at the entrance where cold air infiltration is highest. Pregnant women and elderly in the most thermally protected positions. This is not about fairness or comfort. This is about genetic survival. Children have higher surface area to volume ratios and lose heat faster than adults. They must be buffered by adult body heat or they die first. Pregnant women are carrying the next generation. Their survival is prioritized. So the strongest adults can withstand the harshest positions because they have the metabolic reserves to compensate for higher heat loss. But positioning is only half the protocol. Body orientation matters. Everyone lies on their side in fetal position to minimize surface area exposure. Everyone faces the same direction to create airflow patterns that distribute breath moisture and prevent carbon dioxide pooling. Everyone maintains physical contact with at least 2 other people to maximize conductive heat sharing. Breaking contact even for 1 hour means the isolated individual drops into hypothermia. Your ancestors did not tolerate individualism in sleeping arrangements. You slept in formation or you did not wake up. This was not oppression. This was thermodynamics enforced through social protocol. And the groups that maintained this discipline for 600 generations created you. The groups that did not maintain it left no descendants. These 4 pillars are not primitive survival tips. They are the engineering foundation of human persistence in environments that should have killed us all. Sleep was not rest. Sleep was a tactical operation executed with the precision of a military campaign where failure meant casualties. You did not simply close your eyes and hope to wake up. You entered a structured protocol that had been refined over 10,000 years through the deaths of everyone who got it wrong. This protocol governed when you slept, how you slept, who you slept next to, how you breathed when you woke, and what you did the instant consciousness returned. Every element was non-negotiable. Every deviation was fatal. And the sophistication of this sleep protocol reveals a truth that shatters the myth of primitive simplicity. Your ancestors were not lucky survivors stumbling through the darkness. They were engineers of consciousness, operating at the absolute edge of human physiological limits. The rotation system was the foundation of everything. 8 people, 4 two-hour shifts. Perfect distribution. The person going on watch was woken by the previous watchkeeper using a specific touch protocol. 2 gentle presses on the shoulder. Never sudden, never startling. Sudden awakening causes adrenaline spike, which causes increased heart rate, which causes increased oxygen consumption, which depletes glycogen reserves faster. Your ancestors understood this not through medical knowledge, but through observation that people who were startled awake were more exhausted by morning. The awakening touch was firm enough to penetrate sleep, but gentle enough to allow gradual consciousness return. The person being woken had approximately 30 seconds to achieve full alertness. During those 30 seconds, the previous watchkeeper remained present, maintaining physical contact, providing thermal continuity until the transition was complete. The watch duties were not complex, but they were absolute. First, check the fire. Not feed it. Check it. Observe the flame color. Blue means clean combustion and good oxygen. Yellow means incomplete combustion and carbon monoxide production. Orange means too much fuel and oxygen depletion. If the flame is blue, do nothing. If the flame is yellow or orange, adjust by either adding 1 small piece of wood or removing 1 partially burned piece. Second, check the smoke hole. Look up. Verify that stars are visible through the opening. If smoke is obscuring the stars, ventilation is inadequate. Wake everyone immediately and increase the smoke hole size. This has happened twice this winter. Both times, immediate action prevented suffocation. Delayed action would have meant finding 8 corpses by morning. Third, check every person. Move through the sleeping formation. Verify that everyone is breathing, not by asking, not by calling names, by watching chest movement and listening for breath sounds. Unconscious humans do not respond to questions, and checking consciousness by waking people defeats the purpose of the rotation. You verify life through observation. You place your hand near each person's face to feel breath warmth. You watch for the condensation cloud that forms with each exhalation. If someone has stopped breathing, you wake them immediately and move them closer to the fire. Carbon monoxide poisoning causes respiratory depression before death. Early detection means survival. Late detection means corpse. Fourth, check for predators. Listen for movement outside. Smell for the musk of carnivores. Look for shadows crossing the smoke hole. Feel for vibrations in the ground that signal large animal approach. Your senses are heightened during watch because adrenaline keeps you alert. This is not fear. This is survival physiology. Fifth, Check your own body. Assess your fingers for numbness. Assess your toes for sensation loss. Assess your face for frostbite indicators. If you detect tissue damage, wake the group elder who has the medical knowledge to treat early-stage freezing before permanent damage occurs. Sixth, wake the next person using the two-press shoulder protocol. Maintain contact during their 30-second transition. Brief them on any anomalies observed during your watch. Fire status, predator sounds, individual breathing irregularities, temperature changes. Then return to your position in the sleeping formation and allow yourself to lose consciousness. This entire sequence takes approximately 8 to 12 minutes. You execute it 4 times per night, every night, for 6 months of winter, for your entire life. The mathematics of this rotation are brutal but necessary. 2-hour shifts mean everyone gets approximately 6 hours of broken sleep per night. Not optimal, but sufficient. Continuous 8-hour sleep is a modern luxury that would kill you at -40 degrees Celsius. Uninterrupted sleep means unmonitored fire means either freezing or suffocation. Broken sleep in 2-hour blocks allows REM cycle completion while maintaining system vigilance. Your ancestors did not understand sleep architecture. They understood that 2-hour rotations kept people alive, and 4-hour rotations resulted in dead watchkeepers who fell asleep at their post. The breathing protocol during sleep was equally sophisticated. You did not breathe through your mouth. Mouth breathing at -40 degrees Celsius causes direct cold air contact with lung tissue, which causes inflammation, which causes fluid accumulation, which causes pneumonia, which causes death. You breathed through your nose with a fur scarf positioned over your face. The scarf pre-warmed incoming air and captured moisture from exhalations, which humidified the next breath and prevented respiratory tissue from desiccating. But here is where the protocol becomes extraordinary. The group breathing synchronized automatically, not through conscious effort, through autonomic nervous system entrainment. When 8 people sleep in physical contact, their breathing patterns align within approximately 40 minutes. This synchronization is not cultural, it is neurological. Mirror neurons and tactile feedback create rhythm matching. And synchronized breathing provides survival advantages that seem almost impossible. First, carbon dioxide distribution becomes uniform. 8 people breathing randomly creates localized CO2 concentrations. 8 people breathing in sync creates wave-pattern air movement that distributes CO2 evenly and prevents toxic pooling. Second, heat production becomes rhythmic. Exhalation produces moisture and warmth. Synchronized exhalation creates thermal pulses that are more effective at maintaining temperature than random individual breathing. Your ancestors did not design this. Evolution designed this. Groups whose nervous systems entrained more effectively survived at higher rates. Groups whose members remained physiologically independent died at higher rates. You are the descendant of the synchronizers. The awakening triggers were the final layer of the protocol. You did not wake up when you felt like it. You woke up when specific sensory thresholds were crossed. Temperature drop below a certain point triggered automatic arousal. Your hypothalamus detected core temperature decline and initiated waking response before hypothermia became severe. Through carbon dioxide concentration above a certain threshold triggered gasping reflex that woke you before suffocation. Smoke smell triggered immediate consciousness. Sound of predator movement outside triggered instant alertness with adrenaline surge that prepared you for fight or flight. These were not trained responses. These were hardwired survival reflexes refined through 60,000 years of selection pressure where the people whose brains did not wake them up in response to danger did not leave descendants. But there was one awakening trigger that was purely cultural: the dawn touch. When the first person woke naturally as morning approached, they did not simply get up and start their day. They performed the wake sequence. Moving through the sleeping formation, they touched each person with the specific two-press protocol and bringing everyone to consciousness simultaneously. This synchronized awakening served multiple purposes. It prevented the chaos of people waking randomly and disrupting others. It allowed immediate group coordination for the dangerous transition from night protocols to day protocols. It reinforced social bonding through shared ritual. And most critically, it allowed the group to assess everyone's condition simultaneously. If someone did not wake to the dawn touch, if someone was unresponsive or disoriented, the entire group knew immediately that intervention was needed. Medical crisis, hypothermia, carbon monoxide exposure, or predator injury could be addressed collectively rather than discovered hours later when it was too late. Listen to this scene. It is 3 hours past midnight. You are on watch. The fire is blue flame, stable, consuming its fuel efficiently. The smoke hole shows stars. Everyone is breathing. The rhythm of 8 chests rising and falling fills the shelter with a sound like distant waves. You can see breath clouds forming and dissipating in the firelight. The temperature inside the sleeping formation is approximately -5 degrees Celsius. Outside, it is -42. The wind has increased. You can hear it testing the shelter walls, probing for weaknesses. Somewhere far away, a wolf pack is howling. Not close enough to be a threat. Close enough to remind you that teeth are always waiting. You check your hands. Sensation intact. You check your feet. No numbness. You add 1 piece of wood to the fire. The flame color remains blue. You move to wake your uncle for the next watch. 2 presses on his shoulder. He stirs. 30 seconds. His breathing changes from sleep rhythm to waking rhythm. He opens his eyes. You brief him. Fire stable. No predators. Wind increasing. He nods. You return to your position between your wife and your cousin. You close your eyes. And you allow the protocol to carry you back into unconsciousness. Because the protocol works. Because 600 generations proved that it works. Because you trust the system more than you trust your individual instincts. And that trust is the only reason you will see morning. There is no hero. There never was. Every survival movie you have ever watched is a lie. Not because the survival techniques are wrong, though they usually are, but because the fundamental premise is fiction, the lone protagonist against the rugged individual conquering the wilderness through personal strength and determination. The survivor who makes it out alive while everyone else dies. This is not how humans survived the Ice Age. This is not how humans survived anything. And the archaeological evidence destroys this myth so completely that it is almost obscene that we still tell these stories. Because the truth is not dramatic in the way Hollywood wants. The truth is that you did not survive -40 degrees Celsius. We did. And that difference is everything. Let us be absolutely clear about what the evidence shows. Every single Paleolithic winter shelter ever excavated shows signs of multi-generational occupation and group living. Not occasional group living. Not temporary cooperation. Permanent, structured, hierarchical group organization that governed every aspect of survival. The shelters are sized for 8 to 15 people. The sleeping arrangements show differentiated positions based on age and status. The tool caches show specialized equipment for specialized roles. The food storage shows coordinated hunting and rationed distribution. There is zero archaeological evidence of successful solo winter survival in Arctic conditions during the Paleolithic. 0. The individuals who tried to winter alone left their bones scattered in caves with their tools beside them, and no descendants to remember their names. Natural selection was not subtle about this. Cooperation was not optional. It was the entry price for survival. But this was not just people huddling together for warmth. This was social engineering so sophisticated that it rivals modern organizational management theory. Every member of the group had specific roles that were trained from childhood. The fire tenders who understood combustion and fuel selection. The shelter engineers who understood thermal mass and ventilation. The hunters who understood game behavior and weapon construction. The hide processors who understood tanning and garment maintenance. The tool makers who understood lithic technology and bone working. The healers who understood injury treatment and hypothermia management. The elders who held the knowledge base and made group decisions. The children who were being trained in all roles simultaneously to ensure knowledge transmission. This division of labor was not about efficiency. It was about survival complexity exceeding individual cognitive capacity. One person cannot hold all the knowledge required to survive an Arctic winter. The information load is too high. The skill set is too diverse. The attention demands are too distributed. You cannot simultaneously hunt, process hides, maintain fire, monitor weather, treat injuries, repair tools, manage food stores, and defend against predators. The cognitive bandwidth does not exist. Your ancestors solved this through collective cognition. The group's knowledge was greater than the sum of individual knowledge because information was specialized, distributed, and accessible through social query. If you needed to know whether a particular plant was medicinal, you asked the healer. If you needed to know whether the ice on the river was safe to cross, you asked the elder. If you needed to know how to repair a broken spear point, you asked the toolmaker. This distributed intelligence network was humanity's first and most important technology. Not fire, not stone tools. Cooperation. And cooperation required social protocols that were enforced with life and death seriousness. The rotation protocol you learned in Chapter 4 was not just about fire management. It was about trust. Every person had to trust that the person on watch would not fall asleep, would not make mistakes, would not prioritize their own comfort over group safety. That trust was built through absolute reliability demonstrated over years. Breaking protocol even once meant social consequences that could include expulsion from the group. And expulsion meant death, not metaphorical death. Actual freezing alone in the darkness death. Your ancestors understood that social cohesion was a survival requirement, and they enforced it through mechanisms that make modern social pressure look gentle. You cooperated, or you died. There was no third option. But here is what makes this truly extraordinary. The cooperation was not coerced. It was internalized. Children were raised in an environment where collective survival was so obviously necessary that individualism never developed as a competing value system. You did not think of yourself as an individual who sometimes cooperated with a group. You thought of yourself as a component of a group that sometimes acted independently. Your identity was collective. Your survival was collective. Your success was collective. The modern concept of the self-made individual would have been incomprehensible to your ancestors. Not because they lacked intelligence, because they understood reality better than we do. And the reality is that humans are not apex predators. Humans are apex cooperators. We did not claw our way to the top of the food chain through strength or speed or natural weapons. We cooperated our way to dominance. Every other predator on the planet that competed with humans during the Ice Age had superior individual capabilities. Cave lions were stronger. Short-faced bears were larger. Dire wolves were faster. Saber-toothed cats had better weapons. And every single one of those species is extinct. Not because humans outcompeted them individually, because humans outcooperated them collectively. A single human against a single cave lion dies every time. 8 humans with coordinated tactics and specialized weapons kill the lion and eat it for dinner. The lion could not adapt to fight coordinated groups. The lion's evolutionary strategy was individual dominance. That strategy failed when it encountered collective intelligence. And the same pattern repeated across every major predator that challenged human expansion. Individual strength lost. Collective cooperation won. Every single time. The protocols you learned in the previous chapters were not just survival techniques. They were the operating system of human consciousness. The 4 pillars, the rotation system, the breathing synchronization, the dawn touch. These were not isolated practices. They were expressions of a worldview where group survival was the only survival, where individual needs were subordinated to collective needs, not through oppression, but through understanding that there was no meaningful distinction. Your survival and group survival were identical. If the group died, you died. If the group survived, you survived. This was not philosophy. This was thermodynamics expressed through social organization, and it worked for 60,000 years. Now ask yourself this question: what happened to that worldview? Where did it go? When did we decide that individualism was superior to cooperation? When did we start telling stories about lone heroes instead of coordinated teams? When did we forget that the fundamental human survival strategy is not competition, but collaboration? The answer is recent, shockingly recent. The myth of rugged individualism is a modern invention, created by cultures wealthy enough to insulate individuals from the immediate consequences of social breakdown. You can afford to be an individualist when you have central heating, grocery stores, and emergency services. You cannot afford to be an individualist at -40 degrees Celsius with no backup and no rescue. Reality reasserts itself quickly in survival conditions. And reality says cooperation or death. Here is the truth that should terrify and inspire you in equal measure. Everything you have, everything you are, everything you will ever accomplish exists because 10,000 generations of humans cooperated so effectively that they survived conditions that should have killed them all. You are not the descendant of the strongest individuals. You are the descendant of the most cooperative groups. Your DNA is not a record of individual triumph. It is a record of collective success. And the moment you forget that, the moment you believe the Hollywood myth that you can survive alone, you have disconnected from the fundamental reality of human existence. We are not built for isolation. We are built for cooperation. Our brains are cooperation engines. Our emotions are cooperation signals. Our survival instincts are cooperation protocols. Everything that makes you human is designed to function in a group context. The 4 pillars that kept your ancestors alive at -40 degrees Celsius were not technological innovations. They were social innovations implemented through collective action and maintained through cultural transmission. Shelter architecture required coordinated construction. Fire management required rotation protocols. Insulation layering required specialized processing. Body positioning required subordination of individual preference to collective optimization. None of these pillars work in isolation. All of them require cooperation. And that cooperation required something more fundamental than technique. It required the understanding that your life was not your own. Your life was a component of a larger system. And that system only functioned if every component performed its role perfectly. This is the truth Hollywood will never show you. Because it is not dramatic. Because it does not fit the narrative of individual heroism. Because it requires accepting that you are not special. You are not the hero. You are one voice in a chorus that has been singing for 60,000 years. And that chorus is the only reason you exist.